Some of the deepest wounds bleed only in the soul, and the ones who caused them will convince you they never touched you. The most dangerous abuse doesn't scream. It whispers until your own voice disappears. You don't remember exactly when it started, only that somewhere along the way, your confidence faded, your boundaries blurred, and your instincts stopped being yours. You began apologizing for things you didn't do. You questioned your tone, your memory, your reactions. You wondered, am I overreacting, or have I just been made to feel like I am again? That's not insecurity. That's manipulation by design. This is emotional abuse in its most deceptive form, invisible, subtle, and devastating. It doesn't slap you, it shapes you. Slowly, quietly. It doesn't break bones, it bends reality until you forget what it was like to feel safe in your own mind. And that's why it's so hard to leave, because it doesn't look like abuse. It looks like a relationship that just needs work. A partner who's just stressed. A version of love where your suffering is somehow your fault. But deep down, something inside you knows, this isn't love. This is erosion. Today on Victory Stoic, we're going to pull back the curtain on the kind of abuse that hides behind charm, intellect, and false calm. The kind that doesn't want to hurt you quickly, but keep you quietly questioning yourself forever. We'll walk through the psychological mechanisms behind this manipulation. Not to scare you, but to free you, because once you can name it, you can fight it. Once you see it, you stop falling for it. This series marks a shift. From here on, we're weaving Stoicism with modern psychology, drawing from Seneca to Carl Jung, Marcus Aurelius to Jordan Peterson, Epictetus to Esther Perel. The goal? To give you a 360-degree understanding of the inner war you may not even know you're fighting. If you believe this message needs to be heard, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone you trust. Comment 1 below if this topic speaks to you, or 0 if it doesn't land yet. Your feedback helps shape the content we bring to you. And if you've ever lived through this kind of silent suffering, tell us your story. It matters. More than you know. Let's begin. Number 1, the wound you can't prove. Psychological abuse that leaves you questioning your own sanity. You wake up every day next to someone who says they love you. They smile, they touch your face, they say things like, "You're my everything." And yet there's a hollow ache you can't explain. You walk on eggshells, carefully phrasing every sentence, afraid of triggering something. You're not sure what exactly, but you know it's real. And you know you've stopped feeling like yourself. This is what makes covert emotional abuse so dangerous. There are no bruises, no screaming, no broken dishes, nothing you can point to and say, "Look, this is wrong." Instead, the damage is subtle. It rewires your thinking. You begin to doubt your memory, your reactions, your worth. You don't know when it started. You only know that now you second-guess everything, including your right to feel hurt. It's not a punch, it's erosion. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus warned, it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. And the abuser, the subtle, polished, articulate abuser, makes sure you never feel confident enough to trust your knowledge, your intuition, yourself. That's the game. To convince you that your pain is your own invention. Take Daniel, a 43-year-old father of 2 from Pennsylvania, an Army veteran. Calm, disciplined, never cried until year 5 of his marriage. His wife, Rachel, was admired by everyone, smart, elegant, active in the church. But inside the home, the script flipped. If he was quiet, she'd say he was moody. If he spoke up, she'd call him aggressive. If he disagreed, she'd accuse him of being selfish. Slowly, she chipped away at his certainty. When he discovered she had been messaging her ex, she turned it around. "If you weren't so paranoid, I wouldn't need to talk to someone who understands me." Daniel didn't explode. He collapsed inward. Months later, in therapy, he would whisper, "I don't know who I am anymore." This is the signature of invisible abuse. You lose your sense of self before you even realize something's wrong. Psychologically, this tactic is known as gaslighting, coined from the 1944 film Gaslight, where a husband manipulates his wife into thinking she's going insane by dimming the lights and denying it. According to the American Psychological Association, gaslighting is a form of manipulation where the abuser sows seeds of doubt, making the victim question their perception, memory, and even sanity. It's not an outburst, it's a campaign. Jordan Peterson speaks directly to this collapse of identity When people are continually made to feel as if their emotions are invalid, their memories untrustworthy, and their needs unreasonable, they shrink. And once you shrink, you become easier to shape. That's the point. The abuser doesn't want to destroy you physically. They want you pliable, easy to redirect, dependent, confused, the kind of person who apologizes for being hurt. The most terrifying part is that you often don't even realize it's happening. Why? Because the abuser wraps cruelty in concern. They don't scream, they explain. They don't insult, they give feedback. They don't control you, they worry about you. So you stay, you try harder, you bend, you blame yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And when someone else slowly teaches you to think less of yourself, not with fists, but with phrases like, "You're too sensitive," "You always twist my words," "You're imagining things," they are not just hurting you, they are rewriting your inner narrative. It's not just emotional, it's neurological. Studies from Harvard Medical School have shown that chronic exposure to emotional invalidation and manipulation increases cortisol, disrupts memory, and even weakens the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making and self-awareness. In short, psychological abuse doesn't just change your mood, it changes your brain. So what can you do? First, name it. The power of this abuse lies in confusion. Write down what was said, what you felt, what happened afterward. Patterns will emerge, and once you see a pattern, you're no longer under its spell. This is not emotional venting, it's evidence collection. For yourself. Second, create space, even a mental one. If you cannot leave yet, create small rituals that are yours alone. Morning walks with no phone, journaling without censoring, listening to your own thoughts without their edits. Every act of self-trust is an act of quiet rebellion. Third, speak truth without needing permission. You don't need them to agree that something was wrong for it to be wrong. Their denial doesn't negate your experience. You are not too much. You are not imagining it. You are not broken. You are emerging. And finally, remember, emotional abuse doesn't always look like war. Sometimes it looks like peace on the surface, while your mind burns in silence. But Stoicism doesn't ask us to pretend nothing hurts. It asks us to see clearly why it hurts, and to stop cooperating with the thing that keeps the pain in motion. As Seneca said, you suffer more in imagination than in reality. But in abuse, the imagination is the reality, and your task now is to reclaim it. Rebuild your voice, recover your story, relearn your truth. Because the most dangerous abuse is not the one that breaks you, it's the one that convinces you that you deserved it. Number 2, the mirror that only reflects you. How shifting blame rewrites your identity. You could walk into a room filled with shattered glass, blood on the floor, and they'll still find a way to say, "You made me do this." Not because you raised your voice, not because you acted irrationally, but because you simply exist in their world as a screen onto which everything broken is projected. Shifting blame is not just a habit for the narcissist. It is a foundational survival mechanism. A way to maintain the illusion that they are flawless, untouchable, always justified. And you become the perfect villain in the narrative they've written. Imagine a mirror that only reflects your flaws and hides theirs. That's what this kind of abuse does to your mind. You look at every failure, every fight, every cold night on opposite sides of the bed, and somehow you say, maybe it was me, maybe I pushed too hard, maybe I was too emotional, maybe I didn't say it right. It's not reflection, it's programmed self-blame. Take Ryan, a 40-year-old construction manager from Kansas City, married 9 years, 3 kids. He prides himself on being even-tempered, responsible, loyal, but his wife Jenna knew how to flip the script with surgical precision. She'd lash out, disappear for days, drain their account to shop or gamble, and yet somehow always made Ryan feel like he provoked it. If he questioned her spending, he was controlling. If he expressed hurt, he was too sensitive. After every argument, he found himself apologizing. Not because he was guilty, but because it was the only way to get her to stop. Over time, he stopped asking questions. Then he stopped expressing needs. Then he stopped thinking he had any right to speak up at all. This is the slow indoctrination of blame shifting. It doesn't just silence you, it reshapes who you believe you are. Jordan Peterson explains this with unsettling clarity. When you are punished for honesty, you become a liar. not because you want to deceive, but because you want to survive. If every attempt to speak truth leads to retaliation, emotional withdrawal, or weaponized guilt, eventually you stop trying. You learn to take the blame, even when you know somewhere deep down it isn't yours. In psychological terms, this pattern is known as projection. The narcissist cannot tolerate the idea of being wrong because it shatters the fragile shell of their inflated ego, so instead, they transfer guilt. Psychologist Dr. Eleanor Greenberg describes this as narcissistic blame shifting, a tactic used to preserve self-image at any cost. The key is subtlety. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's disappointment, a sigh, a silent retreat, a question framed just enough to make you reevaluate your entire position. Why are you always so negative? Or why do you make everything so difficult? Over time, this conditioning rewires your default setting. You begin to enter every conflict assuming you're the problem. You say sorry preemptively. You over-explain. You obsess over tone and timing. You manage their emotions while ignoring your own. In effect, you become the scapegoat, not just in their eyes, but in your own internal dialogue. The Stoic philosopher Musonius Rufus once said, "It is not enough to avoid injustice. We must also not become its instrument." But when you absorb blame that isn't yours, you don't just tolerate injustice, you enable it. And worse, you lose the ability to discern what actually belongs to you. That confusion becomes a fog, and in the fog, the narcissist always wins. To help visualize this mechanism, picture a rigged scale. Every time something goes wrong, they quietly slide a weight onto your side, not with force, but with suggestion. You feel things tipping, but you don't see their hand, so you adjust, you lean harder, you carry more, and eventually you don't even question the imbalance. You believe you're built to bear it. This isn't strength, it's distortion. So how do you untangle yourself from this trap? Tip number 1, the 90-second check-in. After every argument or conflict, take 90 seconds alone. Ask yourself, what actually happened? What did I say? What did they say? What am I feeling? And does that feeling make sense for what happened? Write it down if you need to. This micro-habit builds your reality muscle. It grounds you in facts, not fog. Tip number 2, track the pattern. Start a simple log. No emotion, just events. Note the date, what triggered the conflict, how it played out, and who took the blame. Patterns will emerge. Once you see repetition, the illusion breaks. Tip number 3, reclaim the word no. You don't need to argue, you don't need to convince, you don't need to apologize for having a boundary. Practice saying, "That's not accurate, that's not how I experienced it," or simply, "I disagree." Calmly, firmly, without elaboration. Every time you resist automatic guilt, you reclaim a piece of your power. Peterson also notes, boundaries are not the walls that keep people out. They are the doors that decide who gets to stay. Shifting blame is not just about manipulation, it's about trespass. Every time they offload guilt onto you, they step into your mind uninvited. Boundaries don't just protect your time, they protect your truth. The Stoics remind us that suffering is not always in what happens, but in how we interpret it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." But this only applies when the mind is clear. When someone else has been planting seeds of false guilt, you can't choose not to feel harm, because you no longer trust your ability to tell harm from help. That's what makes blame shifting so insidious. It doesn't just injure your self-worth, it infiltrates it. You end up defending the very person who's been eroding you. To anyone trapped in this mental prison, you are not imagining it. You are not too emotional. You are not the problem. You've simply been standing in front of a mirror that only shows you your flaws. A mirror handed to you by someone too afraid to look into one themselves. You don't need their permission to step away. You don't need their agreement to reclaim your story. You just need one brave moment of clarity to say, "That's not mine," and walk away lighter. Number 3, charm is not intimacy. Charm is bait. Let me tell you about someone we all know. Maybe you've met them in your neighborhood, at a dinner party, a corporate event, or through a mutual friend. They're that person who walks into a room and seems to own the energy without trying. They make everyone laugh, remember your name after one meeting, and compliment your outfit in a way that feels surprisingly personal. They're warm, articulate, charismatic. Everyone loves them. Everyone wants to be around them. But there's one person, just one, who seems tired when they're near. One person who hesitates before speaking. One person who used to shine, and now just flickers. Meet Derek, 44, lives in a quiet suburb outside Denver. Well-spoken, good job, hosts an annual backyard barbecue that the whole block shows up to. Knows just the right thing to say to your kids, your boss, your mom. His wife Lana used to be vibrant, opinionated, magnetic in her own right. But over the years she's gotten quieter, a little thinner, laughs a little less. People say she's just more private. But what they don't see, what Derek is careful no one sees, is what happens after the party ends. Because Derek isn't just charming, he's strategic, and his charm is a tool, not a personality trait. This is the face of covert abuse cloaked in charisma, the kind that doesn't just fool outsiders, it confuses the victim. Because how can someone who's so kind, generous, funny, thoughtful, also be the same person who later makes you cry and then tells you you're too emotional? How can someone who says you're beautiful in public later nitpick your appearance in private? How can someone who tells others how lucky they are to have you repeatedly imply you're a burden at home? The answer is, charm is not intimacy. Charm is bait. Psychologist Dr. George Simon calls this kind of behavior impression management. It's how manipulators build a public image to contrast and thereby discredit any private accusations. It's calculated, not accidental. The goal is to create confusion, to ensure that if you ever speak up, people will say, "Really? But he seems so nice." And worse, you'll say it to yourself. That's the true damage. You begin to question your own experience. Jordan Peterson, in one of his lectures on deception, states, "Beware of the man who smiles too much, for he may be hiding teeth." What Peterson is getting at isn't cynicism, it's discernment. Not every pleasant person is dangerous, but some use pleasantness the way a spider spins silk, elegant, smooth, and built for capture. Lana stayed for years. Because Derek wasn't always cruel. He brought her flowers, bragged about her achievements, gave the best hugs. But over time, he began subtly eroding her self-trust. "You're overreacting. No one else sees it the way you do. You always take things the wrong way." When she wanted to try a new career, he said, "That's cute, but you wouldn't last in that environment." When she confronted him about a flirty message he sent to a coworker, he laughed. "You're being paranoid, again." And then, of course, he'd circle back with dinner, wine, a kiss on the forehead. "You know I love you, right?" And she stayed, because the nice moments felt real, because he never hit her. Because when she tried to talk to friends, they said, "But Derek, he adores you." And eventually, she stopped talking. That's the charm trap. You're not just fighting a person, you're fighting their reputation. Their persona becomes a cage, and you're locked inside, smiling for appearances. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once warned, "It is the act of a madman to entrust your sense of worth to another's opinion." But in a long-term relationship with someone like Derek, your worth isn't just handed over, it's chipped away until you no longer remember what it was built from. So how do you begin to see through the charm? First, watch the contrast. Healthy people are consistent. If someone is glowing in public and dismissive in private, that is not complexity, it is a mask. Second, ask yourself not how they make others feel, but how they make you feel when no one's watching. Do you feel safe to speak freely? Do you feel respected when you disagree? Or do you find yourself rehearsing conversations in your head just to avoid setting them off? Third, write down the tiny incidents, the moments that feel too small to matter, the sideways insult wrapped in a compliment, the joke that felt like a cut, the apology that somehow made you feel guilty. These moments are the bricks of the cage. Don't dismiss them. One simple practice to try. Every week, take 10 minutes alone to answer these questions. Did I feel heard this week? Did I feel safe being fully myself? When I disagreed with them, did I feel punished? Keep a running log, because when the abuse is subtle, memory becomes the battlefield, and written truth becomes your armor. Peterson also reminds us, people don't become tyrants all at once. They test, they push, they see what they can get away with. And if no one says no, they keep going. Charming abusers don't break you in a single blow. They seduce you into surrendering inch by inch. And because they're so wonderful, everyone cheers you on, not realizing they're applauding your descent. Here's the final twist. Derek didn't just manipulate Lana, he convinced her to defend him. She'd say, "He's just stressed," or "He doesn't mean it like that." She became his spokesperson, his shield. That's the ultimate victory for the charming abuser, turning you into your own jailer. But the Stoics would say, what injures the soul is not what others do, but what we accept as true. You don't need to scream, accuse, or convince anyone. You just need to stop accepting their version of reality and start rebuilding your own. Charm is not love. Flattery is not safety. And not everyone who smiles at you is offering warmth. Sometimes they're just checking to see if your guard is down. Don't wait for bruises to believe your pain. Pay attention to the quiet ache. That's where the truth is. If you're still reading, if something in this story struck a chord, comment so3 below. Let us know you're here and you see it now. Number 4, the fog. This is the nature of subtle deception. It doesn't come as a storm. It doesn't announce itself with thunder. It comes like fog, quiet, soft, almost gentle. At first you don't even notice it. You think it's the morning dew, or maybe your own breath on cold glass. You tell yourself it'll clear soon, but it doesn't. It thickens. This is the nature of subtle deception, the kind that rewrites your reality, not in one act but in layers, thin, slow, almost invisible. This isn't the abuser who yells or hits. This is the one who shrugs when you ask a direct question, who says, "I never said that," when you know they did, who dodges, twists, smiles at you while lying to your face. And the most dangerous part, you defend them, not because you're naive, not because you're weak, but because you're human. And you want to believe that they're just tired, that they didn't mean it, that you misunderstood, and so you explain away your own confusion. Maybe I'm overthinking, maybe I'm being dramatic, maybe I need to be more patient. That's how it begins. You betray yourself in their favor. Let me tell you about Angela, a 41-year-old accountant from Dallas. Stable job, stable life. Until she met Jared. Tall, brilliant, charming. He didn't sweep her off her feet, he gently lifted her. Said all the right things, asked about her dreams, took her to bookstores instead of bars. She told her friends, "He listens, he gets me." But 6 months in, something shifted. He started getting vague. Wouldn't tell her where he was going, just out with a friend. Wouldn't say what time he'd be back, just "Don't wait up." Wouldn't let her see his phone, just said privacy matters. At first, Angela asked questions. He'd say, "You're really going to interrogate me after everything I do for you?" And the fog crept in. The conversations got slippery. The affection came and went, like a faucet you couldn't control. Sometimes he was sweet, other times cold. When she tried to confront him, he'd say, "You've been tense lately. Maybe talk to someone about that." And so she did. She went to therapy. She blamed herself. She worked on her attachment issues, read books on communication, and journaled every day. But the more she tried to become the perfect partner, the more Jared withdrew. And every time she felt pain, she explained it away. He's just under pressure. He's been through a lot. He just needs space. That's the genius of the abuser who lies without lying. They don't tell you you're wrong. They make you tell yourself that. Psychologist Dr. Jennifer Fried coined the term betrayal blindness. It describes the way victims often choose not to see what's happening, especially when the person hurting them is also the one they rely on. The mind defends itself from emotional pain by rewriting the story. It's a survival strategy, but over time, it becomes a cage made of your own words. Jordan Peterson puts it this way: people don't lie to deceive others. They lie to maintain their illusions. And sometimes the most persistent liar isn't the abuser. It's the victim trying to protect the fantasy that this is love, that this is normal, that you're safe. But Stoicism calls for a different kind of courage. Epictetus wrote, "It is not what happens to you, but how you interpret it that matters." In abuse, interpretation becomes weaponized. You are taught to reinterpret red flags as stress, neglect as space, cruelty as miscommunication. You become a translator of their dysfunction and a traitor to your own intuition. So how do you break the fog? You don't wait for proof, you wait for clarity. You stop asking, "Did they mean to hurt me?" You start asking, "Am I being hurt, and is that acceptable?" You stop tracking their mood and start tracking your own. Try this. Each day, rate your sense of peace on a scale from 1 to 10. Not their behavior, yours, your clarity, your energy, your freedom to speak, to feel, to rest. If your number keeps dropping, you don't need evidence. You need action. Another tip: ask a trusted friend, do I seem different lately? Let someone outside the fog reflect you back to yourself. That mirror may be the first clean surface you've seen in months. The Stoics believe that truth is not comfortable, but it's liberating. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth." But in abuse, no one shows you truth. They hide it. Your work then is not to wait for honesty, it's to build it inside yourself. Angela finally left when Jared accidentally sent a flirty message meant for someone else. He gaslit her, of course. It was just a joke. You're paranoid. I can't do this if you don't trust me. But this time, something broke. Not in her, in the illusion. She saw it for what it was. Not love, not stress, not miscommunication, control, misdirection, cowardice. She cried for 3 days straight. Then she called a lawyer. Then she wrote her own name on the lease. Then she started to breathe again. Because clarity doesn't come like lightning. It comes in layers, like fog lifting at dawn, slowly, stubbornly, one breath at a time. And when it's gone, what's left is not confusion. It's space, stillness, and a mirror that finally shows you the only face that matters. Your own. Number 5. The joke that cuts. How subtle humiliation destroys you in plain sight. It happens in front of others. Always in front of others. That's what makes it so hard to name, so hard to stop. It starts with a smile, a laugh, maybe even a hand around your shoulder. They tell a story about something embarrassing you did, something you said, a private moment you trusted them with. Everyone laughs. And then they add a little extra twist. A mocking voice, a jab at your intelligence, a comment about your body, a cheap shot at your past. Your stomach clenches, but you smile. Because what else can you do? If you speak up, they'll say, it's just a joke. You really can't take one, can you? And now you're not just embarrassed, you're difficult. You're too sensitive. You've just been publicly humiliated, and somehow, it's your fault for not laughing along. This is subtle humiliation, and it's one of the most corrosive forms of emotional abuse because it wears a mask. The mask of humor, wit, teasing. The abuser knows exactly where your vulnerabilities are, and instead of holding them with care, they display them. Not to strangers, to people who matter to you, friends, family, colleagues. They don't scream, insult, or rage. They simply expose you, one cut at a time, wrapped in a grin. Let me tell you about Nina, 35, from Seattle. Works in marketing. Bright, kind, sharp sense of style. She was dating a guy named Matt. Funny, charismatic, the kind of person who lights up a dinner party. But Nina started noticing something. Every time they were around people, he'd make little jokes at her expense. Not outright cruel, just sharp enough. Oh, Nina's terrible with directions. Don't ever let her drive. Nina, bless her heart, thinks kale chips count as a meal. She's cute when she pretends she knows politics. Everyone would laugh. Nina would laugh too, at first. But then came the deeper cuts. She cried over a commercial once, a toothpaste ad. She once called 911 because she thought our neighbor's dog was choking. Turns out it was snoring. Always in front of others. Always said with affection. But she could feel it. The smile was just a little too sharp. The stories always ended with her as the punchline. Eventually, she stopped bringing him around her friends. She didn't want to explain why. She wasn't even sure herself. All she knew was that every time she heard, "Relax, I'm just kidding," something inside her died a little. This isn't lighthearted teasing. This is camouflaged cruelty. Psychologists call this tactic public shaming with plausible deniability. The abuser gets the thrill of undermining your confidence while still appearing charming, funny, and socially graceful. And if you challenge them, you become the problem. You're overthinking it. You're no fun. God, everything's an issue with you. Jordan Peterson explains this dynamic as a failure of boundaries wrapped in a performance. The ability to joke is a form of intimacy, but when used as a weapon, it's betrayal disguised as play. In healthy relationships, jokes strengthen bonds. In toxic ones, they're used to fracture identity. The goal isn't laughter, it's dominance. And it works, because everyone else is laughing. And you're standing there half smiling, wondering if it's really as bad as it feels. The Stoics, too, warned against mockery. Seneca once said, "Let us show our fellows not what is laughable, but what is worthy of respect." A person who mocks under the veil of humor is not trying to connect. They're trying to elevate themselves by stepping on you in front of others. Over time, subtle humiliation changes you. You stop sharing. You shrink in group settings. You dread being alone in a crowd, because that's when the performance begins. You develop social anxiety around your own partner. You prep them before events. Please don't bring that up tonight. And they always smile and say, of course. And then they do. And afterward, come on, people thought it was hilarious. But you weren't laughing. You were swallowing shame again. Here's the thing. This form of abuse thrives on your silence, on your hesitation, on your social fear. But once you name it, you start reclaiming your ground. First tip, start documenting. Not to confront yet, but to validate yourself. Write down what they said, when, how you felt, who was present, how they reacted when you expressed discomfort. Over time, you'll stop asking, am I crazy? And start asking, why did I let that slide? Second tip, use a response script that flips the power without creating open war. When they joke at your expense in front of others, say calmly, if you find that funny, I'm glad, but I don't. Then stop. Let the silence do the work. You're not attacking, you're reclaiming space. You'll be surprised how often others in the room suddenly shift. Third tip, talk to someone outside the relationship. Someone who knows both of you. Tell them a few of the jokes. Watch their reaction. If they laugh, fine, maybe it really is harmless. But if their face drops, you'll know, you're not imagining it. The worst part of subtle humiliation is that it makes you complicit. It makes you laugh along while you're bleeding inside. It trains you to betray yourself in public to protect their image. But you don't have to keep doing that. The Stoics believed that your dignity is yours alone. Marcus Aurelius said, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. In your case, waste no more time debating whether this behavior is that bad. Trust how it makes you feel. If it stings, it's not love. If it repeats, it's not accidental. What hurts in silence will only grow louder in your soul. Speak. Name it. Walk away if you must. But do not let your worth become a joke to the person who claims to love you. You are not a punchline. You are not a story to be laughed at over dinner. You are not difficult for wanting dignity. You are simply remembering who you were before the laughter made you smaller. Number 6, the hope trap. Why it's so hard to leave subtle abuse. You don't stay because you're weak. You stay because you're waiting for the moment it all finally makes sense. Because they used to be kind. Because you've seen flashes of love. Because part of you still believes that if you just try hard enough, explain clearly enough, forgive one more time, they'll come back to who they were. That's the trap. Not the violence, not the cold silence, not even the lies. The trap is hope, wrapped around a deep human longing to be loved by the person who's hurting you. This is what makes covert abuse so binding. It doesn't just hurt, it dangles relief. After every insult comes a half apology. After every withdrawal comes a warm touch. After every manipulation comes a smile that says, we're fine now, right? And for a moment you breathe. You believe. Maybe this time it's real. Maybe it's finally going to get better. This is the emotional yo-yo that keeps victims tethered. Abuse, affection, confusion, hope, abuse again. You're not just surviving pain. You're addicted to the next hit of validation. And you can't quit because your nervous system has been rewired to chase that relief. Lisa, 38, a nurse from North Carolina, knows this well. She was with her partner, James, for 6 years. He never raised his hand, never yelled, but he chipped away at her confidence, slowly and expertly. When she got a promotion, he said, I guess they needed to check a diversity box. When she brought up her hurt, he responded, you always make me out to be the bad guy. But every time she thought of leaving, he'd flip, cook dinner, rub her back, whisper, I'm just stressed, you know I love you. And she'd stay. Not because she didn't know what was happening, but because she still believed he could change. That the man she first met was buried under the damage, and she just had to be patient enough to help him rise. What Lisa didn't know then is what so many don't. You weren't just traumatized, you were bonded to your own hope. This is called trauma bonding, a term coined by psychologist Patrick Carnes. It refers to the emotional attachment victims develop with their abusers, especially when abuse is interspersed with periods of kindness, apology, and closeness. The unpredictability creates a cycle that resembles addiction. and hope becomes the drug that keeps you hooked. The Stoics, though they lived centuries ago, understood the trap of misplaced longing. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." The narcissist's love, their moods, their promises, their apologies are all outside your control. And the more you invest in trying to fix, change, or prove yourself to them, the more you hand over your inner freedom. So how do you break the cycle? Lisa's breakthrough came the day she stopped calling it toxic. She told her therapist, "I think this relationship is just dysfunctional." And the therapist said, "No, it's not dysfunctional, it's abusive." That moment changed everything. Naming it for what it is stripped away the illusion. Lisa realized she had been watering a dead garden for years. And what hurt wasn't just the abuse, it was her own silence in the face of it. Step 1 in healing is naming. Not "he has issues." Not "we're complicated." Not "we just need time." Call it abuse, because once you name it, you stop negotiating with it. Step 2 is reclaiming your safety. Not just physical, but emotional and cognitive safety. That means refusing to let their voice be louder than your own. Write down what happened, exactly, word for word, how it made you feel, what you told yourself afterward. Then read it back like it happened to your sister or your child. Would you tell them to stay? Or would you say, "That's not love, that's control dressed in concern"? Step 3. Listen to yourself. Not the story you've been told. Not the fear-based loyalty that says you owe them more chances. You owe yourself a second chance. At peace, at clarity, at life without fear. Build a practice of self-attunement. That might be daily journaling, mindful body scans, honest conversations with trusted friends. The goal is to rebuild emotional literacy, to hear your own signals before someone else drowns them out. Step 4. Manage the grief. Because yes, you'll miss them. But often what you're missing isn't the real person. It's the version you hoped they'd become. You're not mourning the loss of love. You're mourning the story you built around the pain. That's not weakness. That's the last piece of hope dissolving, and with it, your final tether. Peterson says, "You're not obligated to rescue someone who's drowning if they're dragging you down with them." Sometimes the moral act is to let go and swim. He's right. Loyalty isn't virtue when it destroys you. Compassion without boundaries becomes complicity. And the Stoics would remind you, you were born to be free. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." So ask yourself, what color has your soul taken on since this relationship began? If it's gray, dull, fearful, tired, it's not you, it's what you've been made to believe about you. Lisa's recovery wasn't fast, but it was real. She started by writing letters to herself, the kind she wished James had written. She replaced his words with her own. She began to track every moment she felt free, strong, unapologetic. Even if it was just ordering what she wanted without second-guessing it. That's healing. Not some Instagram perfect glow-up, but small acts of reclamation. Because healing from covert abuse is not about waiting for them to change. It's about realizing you were never broken, just conditioned to believe you were. So if you're still stuck, hoping they'll finally apologize, finally become the version you fell for, ask yourself this: if they had the ability to be that person, why did they choose not to be for so long? The answer will break your heart, and then it will set it free. Conclusion: not all wounds bleed. Some just whisper until you disappear. There are no bruises, no broken bones, no frantic calls to the police, but you're not fine. You flinch, not at hands raised, but at tone shifts. You second guess, not the facts, but your feelings. You smile in public, but something deep inside you has gone silent. That's the cruelty of psychological abuse. It doesn't come at you with fists. It eats you from the inside out until you no longer recognize your own reflection. This is the kind of violence that fools the world. Even worse, it fools you. Because no one sees your soul bleeding, they assume you're just moody, difficult, too sensitive, and you begin to believe them. That's the trap. That's the cage. That's how they win. But naming it is the first strike against it. This wasn't just a toxic phase. This wasn't complicated love. This was abuse, silent, strategic, and soul-draining. And now you see it. That's not weakness, that's awakening. Because the truth is, they didn't destroy you. They just convinced you to dim your own light. And you're about to switch it back on. Stoicism isn't about becoming numb, it's about becoming clear. It doesn't ask you to stop feeling, it asks you to stop confusing chaos with connection. It helps you separate what is yours from what was forced onto you. As Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. But now, you're choosing to stop, cooperating with your own erosion. This is your moment to reframe everything. You are not fragile for wanting to be loved. You are not broken for believing too long. You are human, and now you're becoming free. If this message hit you where it hurts and where it heals, like, share, and subscribe to Victory Stoic. We're building something real here. Not just information, but insight. Not just healing, but power. Comment 1 if this resonated. Comment 0 if it didn't quite land. Your honesty makes us sharper. If you've lived through this fog, share your story below. You don't need to write a novel, just a sentence, a moment, a memory. It matters more than you know. Your voice might be the very sentence that wakes someone else up. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for daring to see what so many spend their whole lives avoiding. This is Victory Stoic, where clarity cuts deeper than charm, and truth is the sharpest form of healing.